So the Chicago Bulls took another ass whooping last night, but that's not what I want to talk about today. Today, what I want to talk about is Torrey Craig and how the way that we handled Torrey Craig all year long shows that the Chicago Bulls have no idea what the fuck they're doing. So Craig, he hadn't played in over a month. A lot of people were mad when we just waived him. They were like, how come we couldn't get a second round pick for him? We couldn't get a second round pick for him because he hadn't played in a month because we said he was injured. Clearly, he wasn't really injured because he signed with the Celtics a couple days ago. And then last night, he comes in very productive for them. And I know it's easy to look productive when you're with the Boston Celtics. You're surrounded by that much talent. You have to be a horrible basketball player to not look good. I mean, they make Luke Cornett look good, and we all know he's not that good. So I understand that. I'm not saying that Torrey Craig would look that good on the Chicago Bulls. He never did look that good on the Chicago Bulls, but he was always a serviceable role player. But the reason that the Chicago Bulls could not get any draft capital for him is because they held him out for the last 2 months. And even before that, they barely played him. It really made no sense. The Bulls have no direction. If the goal was to truly compete for a play-in spot, as they've said many times, Torrey Craig should have been part of the rotation. Torrey Craig should have been getting 15, 20 minutes a game. He should have been getting those Dalen Terry, those Julian Phillips minutes early in the year. He's a better basketball player than those guys. He does more things that contribute to winning than those guys. You can argue he's a better basketball player than Patrick Williams. He does more to contribute to winning than Patrick Williams. So there was room for Torrey Craig to get minutes. And let's say that the goal was, and I think this is what I think the honest-to-God goal was, and this is what shows how bad the Bulls are at the execution of any kind of goals. I think the goal was to play good in the first half of the year, build the value of the assets up, and then sell them off at the deadline. So even if that was the plan going into the year, Torrey Craig, he should have been getting some minutes early in the year to build his value up. Instead, the Chicago Bulls didn't have him in the rotation. And then when he did play, he looked good. And then for the last month or so, they held him out. So the way they handled it, it made no sense. If he had been a regular part of the rotation for the whole year, not only would the Bulls have a better record right now, they would have been able to flip him for some second-round draft capital. He was on a veteran minimum deal. Very easy to make the salaries match. They knew, our teams, at the trade deadline, they knew that the Bulls were going to have to waive him. They knew that since he wasn't even part of the rotation and that he hadn't played in the last month, they knew there was no reason to trade for him. So that's why nobody was willing to give up any draft capital for him. Had he been a regular part of the rotation, I guarantee you we could have got a second-round pick out of the guy. So the Chicago Bulls, they just have no direction. No direction at all. I mean, even if the goal was to tank, which I don't think it was, then we would have seen them selling off guys at the trade deadline. They sold off Zach LaVine for absolute garbage. Kevin Huerter is one of the worst players to put on a Bulls uniform. Zach Collins isn't going to get minutes. Trey Jones is nice, but we got 27 point guards on the team, so I don't know what we're doing with that. And they should have, if the goal was to truly tank, Vucevic would have been traded to the Warriors for that package that was out there. Lonzo Ball would have been dealt to the Grizzlies for that package that was out there. Kobe White probably would have been dealt. I would assume it might have been dealt. If tanking was the goal, then it would have made sense why they weren't playing Torrey Craig. But for that to make sense, they would have had to make other moves to make it clear that tanking was the goal. So the Bulls, they're a complete dumpster fire. They're totally directionless. There's an argument, you could make an argument that they have the worst roster in the NBA. If you break it down into 2K terms, if I looked at the Bulls roster, there's not a single player on this roster who I would rate 80 or above. I don't know if there's another team like that in the NBA. Even the Hornets, you would rate LaMelo Ball, you would rate Brandon Miller, at least an 80 and above. Some of the other bad teams in the league, the Nets, you'd give Cam Johnson that rating. The Pelicans, you would give Zion Williamson, maybe CJ McCollum that rating. You look at the bad teams in the NBA, all of them have at least one guy you would at least give that rating. If you're being brutally honest about the Chicago Bulls and the talent on the roster and how they played this year, there's not a single player on this roster who's worthy of an 80 or above rating in 2K. So the way that we've mismanaged this roster is astounding, and the way that Torrey Craig played with the Celtics last night just further proved it to me. So let me know in the comments how you guys feel. I'm happy it's All-Star break. I get a week off from watching this team. They're driving me crazy lately. Let me know what you guys are looking forward to this All-Star break.